So, good afternoon, everyone. Please take a seat. Good afternoon. Thank you. So, my name is Bruno Lete. I'm a senior fellow for the German Marshall Funds of the United States. Let me just first of all welcome you all here in Odessa at the very first edition of the Odessa debate. We at GMF are very proud to partner with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and with the Bumburas Foundation to establish this event as a flagship occasion to talk about Ukraine, the Black Sea region, and the transatlantic partners. We at GMF have a long tradition and a long history of working in Ukraine and the Black Sea region. We do so by supporting civil society through our Black Sea Trust, but we also work on policy issues. We do so simply because we do believe that Ukraine and the Black Sea belong to the Euro-Atlantic family. And the philosophy behind our event is really to confirm that belief. We hope that this event indeed will bring Ukraine, the Black Sea, and the transatlantic partners much closer together. So we do have a slight change of agenda this afternoon, but everyone has received the correct agenda, so please base yourself on this. And without much further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Pandelis Bumburas, the president of Bumburas Foundation, to open the conference. So thank you very much.
Αξιότιμοι κύριοι Υπουργοί των Εξωτερικών,
Високоповажні панове міністри закордонних справ,
αξιότιμοι αξιωματούχοι της Οδυσσού και του διπλωματικού σώματος,
шановне керівництво міста Одеси та області, представники дипломатичного корпусу,
αξιότιμοι στρατιωτικοί αξιωματούχοι, κυρίες και κύριοι σύνεδροι,
шановні панове військові, шановні делегати, пані та панове.
Σας καλωσορίζω στο συνέδριο που το Ίδρυμα Μπούμбουρα διοργανώνει με το Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών της Ουκρανίας και το German Marshall Fund.
Я вітаю вас на конференції, яку фонд Бумбураса організує разом з Міністерством закордонних справ України та німецьким фондом Маршалл.
Ένα συνέδριο που αναφέρεται στις προκλήσεις ασφαλείας και σταθερότητας που αντιμετωπίζει η περιοχή της Μαύρης Θάλασσας.
На цій конференції будуть обговорюватися виклики з безпеки та стабільності, які стоять перед Чорноморським регіоном.
Μιας θάλασσας που προσφέρει μια μοναδική γεωγραφική γέφυρα διασύνδεσης της Ευρώπης με την Κασπία και Κεντρική Ασία.
Чорне море являє собою унікальний географічний міст Європи з Каспійським морем та Центральною Азією.
Γι' αυτό και οι προσκλήσεις ασφαλείας και σταθερότητας στην περιοχή αφορούν όχι μόνο την Ουκρανία, αλλά και την Ουάσιγκτον, τις Βρυξέλλες, το Βερολίνο, το Παρίσι και όλο τον κόσμο.
Саме тому і виклики з безпеки та стабільності в регіоні торкаються не тільки України, але й країн всього світу, але й Брюсселю, Берліну та Парижу.
Τα εγγένεια του Ελληνικού Πάρκου ήταν η αφορμή που ξεκίνησε αυτό το σημαντικό συνέδριο.
Відкриття грецького парку стало приводом для цієї важливої конференції.
Είχα την τιμή να κάνει τα εγγένεια αυτής της δωρεάς μου ο αξιότιμος Υπουργός Εξωτερικών, κύριος Κλімкін.
Високоповажний міністр закордонних справ пан Клімкін надав мені честь та відкрив цей мій подарунок місту.
Παρουσιάζοντας το όραμα που έχω ως Έλληνας της Οδυσσού να αναδεικνύω εθνικά και διεθνώς την Οδυσσό και την Ουκρανία, μου πρότεινε να συνεργαστούμε σε αυτό το διεθνές φόρουμ, μια λαμπρή ιδέα που πραγματοποιείται σήμερα.
Я йому представив своє бачення Одеси греком. бажання підняти Одесу та Україну на національному та міжнародному рівнях. Пан міністр запропонував працювати разом на цьому міжнародному форумі. Блискуча ідея, яка втілилася в життя сьогодні.
Με αυτό το συνέδριο, το Ίδρυμα Μπούμбουρα επιθυμεί να τιμήσει την ιστορική παράδοση της Οδεσσού και να προσφέρει στο κοινό ένα βήμα για να συναντήσει, να μιλήσει και να βρει λύσεις για την ειρήνη και την ευημερία στην περιοχή.
За допомогою цієї конференції Фонд Бумбураса бажає вшанувати історичну традицію Одеси та запропонувати громаді новий крок, щоб зустрітися, поговорити і знайти рішення для миру та добробуту в регіоні.
Καθιερώνουμε λοιπόν ετήσιο συνέδριο στην Οδυσσό που θα συγκεντρώνει διεθνείς προσωπικότητες που μπορούν να βοηθήσουν την ειρηνική και αναπτυξιακή πορεία της χώρας μας, ώστε το Ίδρυμα Μπούμπουρα να συνεχίσει να συμβάλλει επικοδημοτικά στην παγίωση της σταθερότητας στην αγαπημένη μου Ουκρανία.
Отже, ми організували щорічну конференцію в Одесі, де присутні міжнародні діячі, які можуть допомогти мирному шляху та розвитку нашої країни. Так що фонд Бумбураса продовжує вносити конструктивний внесок в зміцнення стабільності в моїй коханій Україні.
Εγώ θέλω να τονίσω ότι η Ουκρανία δεν είναι πια η χώρα που ήταν πριν από 5 χρόνια. Πλησιάζει όλο και περισσότερο την πορεία της προς την Ευρώπη και τους διατλαντικούς εταίρους.
Я хочу підкреслити, що Україна вже не та країна, якою вона була 5 років тому. Вона знаходиться все ближче і ближче на шляху до Європи і трансатлантичних партнерів.
Τα επιτεύγματά μας είναι αξιέπαινα και προχωρούμε μπροστά με τη στήριξη όλων μας.
Наші досягнення схвалені, і ми просуваємося вперед за загальної підтримки.
Κλείνοντας, δεν είναι τυχαίο ότι αποφασίσαμε να πραγματοποιήσουμε αυτή τη μεγάλη ετήσια συνάντηση στην Οδυσσό.
В заключенні, не випадково ми вирішили здійснити цю велику щорічну зустріч саме в Одесі.
Σε όλη την ιστορία αυτή η πόλη ήταν ένα σπίτι για ανθρώπους διαφορετικών εθνικοτήτων, πολιτισμών και θρησκειών, όπου συγκλίνουν και συνδέονται μεταξύ τους.
Протягом всієї історії це місто було домівкою для людей різних національностей, культур та релігій, де вони сходяться та поєднуються між собою.
Σε αυτό το σημείο σας καλωσορίζω όλους στην Οδυσσό για ένα διήμερο επικοδημοτικού διαλόγου και καλώ στο βήμα τον αξιότιμο υπουργό μας, τον κύριο Κλімкін.
На цій ноті я вітаю вас всіх в Одесі для дводнівного конструктивного діалогу і передаю слово шановному міністру закордонних справ пану Клімкіну.
Шановні друзі, шановні пані та панове, це таке особливе почуття бути тут в Одесі в перший весняний день. Я сьогодні, до речі, прямував літаком до Одеси і порахував, що за останні півроку, я от тільки що поділився зі своїми друзями, я двічі був в Вашингтоні, двічі був в Нью-Йорку, тричі в Брюсселі і 4 рази був тут в Одесі. Ну і оскільки, як ви напевно знаєте, я аж ніяк не претендую на будь-які посади тут в Одесі, всі можуть бути спокійні. Єдиний мій мотив – це особливе почуття до Одеси. Я тут відчуваю себе не просто вдома, я відчуваю себе дуже-дуже добре. І я вважаю, що Одеса насправді має все. Одеса впевнена в собі. Але чого в Одесі не було, це свого безпекового форуму. І поміркуйте, де можна обговорювати питання чорноморської безпеки, як не тут, саме в Одесі. Декілька років тому я чув про пана Бумбураса, чув про цю чудову родину, але ми не були знайомі. До того часу, як вони організували в Києві дуже класний форум. Форум щодо нашого шляху до НАТО. Пам'ятаєш, Василь, як ми разом відкривали цей форум? Це була справжня дискусія. Дискусія між друзями. Тому ми колись сіли, розмовляючи про ті проекти, які ми можемо зробити разом. А їх дуже багато. І просто подумали, що нам потрібно тут в Одесі зустріч саме між друзями. Зустріч не для того, щоб виголошувати заяви, ми це, звичайно, добре можемо робити, а зустріч для дискусії між друзями. Тому на сьогодні і на завтра ми запросили саме наших друзів. Для того, щоб для себе уявити, що ми можемо зробити, щоб зміцнити безпеку в регіоні Чорного моря. Чорне море ніколи не буде належати російському режиму. Насправді воно стане для нього Бермудським трикутником. Це 100%. Ми прекрасно розуміємо, подивіться, 30 років тому падіння Берлінської стіни, і зараз навколо Чорного моря всі друзі. Є тільки російський режим, який тотально дестабілізує все, що може. Це він робив весь час. Але потім, якраз 5 років тому, вирішив порушити будь-які принципи, не тільки міжнародного права, але і будь-які моральні принципи, і здійснити окупацію Криму. Ми обов'язково повернемо Крим. Це на сьогодні повернення Крима стало частиною нашої ДНК, частиною ДНК українців, частиною ДНК України, частиною ДНК української нації. Ми це обов'язково зробимо. Для цього маємо бути сильними. Сильними безпеково, сильними економічно. Маємо не просто когось наздоганяти, а перестрибнути. Але так само те, що в житті має якусь цінність, це тільки люди. А це ми, українці, і наші друзі. І саме тому ми сьогодні серед друзів будемо говорити про те, що можемо зробити. І у мене буде багато ідей для обговорення. Дивіться, наші грузинські друзі, Молдова – це країни, які мають йти вперед європейським шляхом. Чому б не зробити зміцнення безпеки Чорноморського регіону частиною подальшого процесу посиленої асоціації? Або ми, і грузинські друзі, ми обов'язково отримаємо членство в НАТО. Але і до цього моменту, і будучи членами НАТО, звичайно, ми маємо співпрацювати в тому, щоб Чорне море було морем безпеки, морем цінностей, морем принципів, щоб тут діяла свобода мореплавства. Слухайте, багато тисяч років тому кожен міг плавати, як хотів. Тепер Росія забороняє нам свободу мореплавства в Керченській протоці, забороняє нам свободу мореплавства в Азовському морі. Вона атакує наші кораблі, захоплює військовополонених. І все, що ми робимо, і все, що ми маємо зробити, насправді є і буде сконцентровано на звільненні наших хлопців, наших військовополонених, як і інших політичних в'язнів, як і інших заручників. Звичайно, нам потрібні наші судна. Ми побудуємо інші, але врешті-решт ці судна – це метал, а люди – це люди. І саме тим ми відрізняємось від Росії. Росії байдуже українці, але й байдуже росіяни. Росії взагалі, російському режиму байдуже люди. А для нас люди – це насправді ми. І тому я дуже вітаю сьогодні представників наших ВМС, ми дуже щільно співпрацюємо. Ми знаємо, що нам потрібно зробити і в сенсі берегової інфраструктури, в сенсі розбудови наших ВМС. Маємо зробити так, щоб ми були кращі за російські. Це може звучати як якась патетика, щось таке амбітне, але я вірю, що так буде. Вірю, що ми це зробимо разом з нашими друзями. І те, що зараз відбувається, от декілька днів тому ми стояли разом на палубі американського есмінця. Я впевнений, що так само колись будемо стояти на палубі українського есмінця. І не тільки в Одесі, а й в Севастополі. От саме до цього маємо прагнути. І так само маємо відбити економічний зашморг Росії. У мене є старовинний друг, це дуже відомий, знаний німецький професор історії. Він вважає, що старовинна легенда, коли греки напали на Трою, була викликана тим, що вони хотіли контролювати потоки зерна звідси, з Чорноморського регіону. Мені особисто хотілося вірити, що прекрасна Єлена теж зіграла якусь роль, але економіка є економіка. Тому те, що маємо зробити, маємо захистити. Маємо захистити український бізнес, українців, українські порти. Маємо захистити свободу мореплавства. І тому для нас дуже важлива позиція всіх наших друзів. Свобода мореплавства за принципами міжнародного права. Тільки це є основою для того, щоб іти вперед. І те, що відбувається і буде відбуватися тут, в Чорному морі, це насправді буде відлунням більш глобального бачення морської безпеки. І ми маємо досягнути безпеки саме тут, в Чорному морі, в Азовському морі і в Керченській протоці, за допомогою того, що станемо по-справжньому сильними, що зможемо працювати далі. Але в цьому нам обов'язково допоможуть наші друзі. Тому сьогоднішня і завтрашня зустріч – це дружня дискусія. Я свідомо і під час наступної дискусії обмежусь декількома ідеями, щоб дати можливість сказати нашим друзям, і я знаю, що підготовлені дуже цікаві пропозиції. Вони про це вам скажуть, причому і безпековий вимір, і юридичний вимір, і економічний. І наостанок. Насправді, існує тільки комплексна відповідь Росії. Неможливо знайти її тільки в одній сфері, тільки в мілітарній, тільки в гібридній. Ми тепер знаємо, що це за термін. Тільки в економічній або протидії інформаційній війни. Ми маємо це зробити разом. Ми знаємо, як це зробити. Ми робимо це. Маємо робити ще краще, оскільки можемо. Друзі, я ще раз дуже радий вас вітати. Це дійсно дуже добре, що в перші весняні дні ми змогли зібратися тут. Пан Бумбурас сказав, що у нас є такий підступний, в хорошому сенсі, план зробити наші дискусії щорічними. Тобто збиратися на початку весни, тут в Одесі, і говорити про безпеку великого Чорноморського регіону. Ну дійсно, де, як не в Одесі. Тому ще раз вітаю, запрошую до дискусії. Ставте всім, хто бере участь в наших дискусіях, складні і підступні запитання, нелегкі, якось сумно відповідати. І бажаю всім нам хорошого форуму. Спробуємо дійсно, щоб це була така унікальна можливість, унікальний майданчик для нашої дискусії. Дуже дякую. І ще раз, пан Бумбурас, дякую за сприяння, за дружнє сприяння і за те, що хтось може бути таким самим патріотом України, може навіть більшим, хоча я, напевно, сказав забагато, як і патріотам Греції. Дуже дякую вам всім.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the host will be sitting there.
He's a.
I guess we do.
Хорошо. We need another chair. Okay? Shouldn't.
Okay, gentlemen, sit down. No, he wants to.
What's that?
I'll take this. Even better.
Even nicer. Even the nicer one. You've got it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to, first of all, I'd like to dispel a rumor that I heard going around that where the going to be Ukraine's entry into Eurovision. I can confirm that's not true. Welcome. It's a real privilege for me. I'm James Marston from the Wall Street Journal. It's a privilege for me to introduce such a distinguished panel. I'm sure most of them don't need any introduction. We've already heard from Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Pavlo Klímkін. We're joined also, sitting to my left, by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs from Georgia, Mr. Vahtang Mахароблішвілі.
Pretty
Close
good.
enough? Close
Very
enough.
good. Very good.
We have Mr. George Kent, sitting there in the grey suit, for the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Eastern Europe and Caucasus from the U.S. State Department. At the end, we have Mr. Pieter Wagner, head of the support group for Ukraine at the European Commission. And we also have a former Foreign Affairs Minister from Bulgaria, who's now the Director of the National Democratic Institute, Mr. Danіел Мітов, sitting right here. We'll start with short opening statements from everybody, just a few opening comments to get things moving, and then as quickly as possible, that's a note to you gentlemen, we'll open things up so we can have as many questions as possible from the audience. I've had a great pleasure of coming to Odessa many times. I used to live in Ukraine. I was supposed to be here in May 2014 for a holiday. I had a discussion with my wife, who's Ukrainian, beforehand, and I said, we should be patriotic, we should go to Odessa. She said, no, we'll go to Normandy. So we went to Normandy, and sadly for me as a journalist, but fortunately for me as a husband, we missed the tragic events of May 2014. The Odessa we see today is a much calmer and a very different city. But Russia's attempts to destabilize the Black Sea region go on, most notably the seizing of the Ukrainian boats, Ukrainian sailors, and the blocking of the Kerch Strait. So I thought we'd start with that, and start with Foreign Minister Klymkin. You know, Russia seized Crimea, it's militarizing the peninsula, it's blocking the Kerch Strait. Can you give us an update on what Ukraine's strategy is for dealing with that? How you coordinate with regional partners and countries further away? Is it a question of containing Russia, or is there something that could be done to push back and change Russia's behavior?
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. It's a great one in the sense of what kind of strategy we all should follow in the sense of countering Russia. And let me start from your last point. I'm a big fan of not just trying to contain Russia. I believe we need a clear, proactive approach. Just simply to react what Russia has been doing and will be doing in the future is definitely not enough. It's a kind of strategy, and it's not a strategy anyway, which gonna create a failure for everybody. One simple point to start with. This year we will have the 30th anniversary of, Berlin Walls basically disappearing physically and also as a symbol. Just recall how the Black Sea looked like 30 years ago. It was just about Turkey as NATO member and everyone else belonging to the Soviet bloc. Now it's completely different. It's just Russia. It's basically vice versa. It's just Russia and Russian regime, and everyone else either members of NATO or striving for NATO. But 30 years ago, it was a kind of equilibrium of stability, if you could call it stability. Now the whole Black Sea area is the source of total instability, and the reason is exactly Russia. So my point is very simple. We need complex answer in the sense of new, powerful strategy, very proactive strategy. Both us and our Georgian friends working together with NATO, infrastructure, sharing intelligence, joint forces, everything which could work against Russia, and in the same way pushing the European Union to embrace a really new strategy of helping us and Georgia and the whole region to push against Russia. And we need a real complex answer, a comprehensive answer, but definitely proactive one, starting from your last point.
Thank you. Now turn to, I'm going to call you Vachtank because it's easier to say. So, from Georgia's point of view, you know, it's more than a decade now since Russia sent troops into Georgia. And that's an event that, given what's happened since in Ukraine, it looks more and more like a warning of what was to come. What are the lessons for Georgia? What lessons have you drawn from that conflict and the current one in Ukraine? And what are the conclusions you've drawn about how neighbors can work together better to stop them from happening?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. Since this is my first remarks, I will use this opportunity to, of course, first of all, thank the organizers, German Marshall Fund, as well as Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and Bumburasa Foundation for organizing this very important and interesting discussions on a topic which is of crucial importance nowadays, since the Black Sea security has been, of course, encountering, as the Minister mentioned just now, a lot of challenges. Well, may I start, in fact, with something different, if I may, and saying that today is the day when, from now on, Georgians can travel to Ukraine and Ukrainians can travel to Georgia without passports, just with ID cards. So this is what we want for the Black Sea region, this kind of a friendship, this kind of a strategic partnership, cooperation, connectivity, trade, and what is the bottom line of everything is that Black Sea should be the sea of prosperity and well-being. Unfortunately, this vision is not shared by one common neighbor, as Minister just mentioned, who has, besides celebrating this free travel between us, unfortunately, we are also having the fifth anniversary of the occupation and annexation of Crimea. Thus, who else than Georgia could really understand better since the end of the Cold War our Ukrainian friends, because most of the things, if not all, that are ongoing in Ukraine, we have been ongoing and happening in Georgia as well. What are the lessons learned, as you have asked? I mean, to say it in a very short way, of course, I would say that the reaction from the international community had not been prompt, had not been adequate to prevent Russian Federation from doing whatever it has been doing more recently, and of course in Ukraine as well. But to say it a little bit in a longer way, if I may, I would say that of course today we are living in a much more complex and contested world, and of course the reaction from our side should be also pretty sophisticated and pretty complex. Of course, hybrid warfare is something that has become a mainstream of Euro-Atlantic discussions today, but hybrid warfare is something that Ukraine had been encountering a lot from quite some time now, and Georgia had been encountering hybrid warfare also, in fact, from the beginning of the early 90s, when Russian Federation has really used the whole toolbox of hybrid warfare in Georgia, be it energy cuts, electricity cuts, food embargo, and so on. I mean, all the instruments. Ukraine, just like Georgia, had been a test ground for all this hybrid warfare. Of course, the direct aggression and occupation of our territories is the major challenge also that we are encountering. And of course, propaganda, disinformation is something that has been very important in the digital revolution world. Thus, of course, what is the lessons learned and how we should react in the region, but also with the involvement of NATO, of European Union, is to counter these challenges, and of course greater interoperability between NATO and European Union in our part of Europe, in our part of Euro-Atlantic area is extremely important. Of course, conflicts is something that should be addressed, and the fact that there had not been enough reaction to what has happened in Georgia, I think is something that has reflected later on in Ukraine and could reflect also elsewhere. Therefore, greater involvement and engagement of international community, of European Union, of NATO, of our partners like United States in a peaceful resolution of the conflicts is something that is crucial, because without security and stability in the Black Sea region, in our part of Europe, there could be no illusion that there will be security and stability in a greater European area, in the Euro-Atlantic area. Of course, one of the greatest tools is the enlargement, because I mean, the enlargement of the European Union, enlargement of NATO have proved to be the biggest contributors to prosperity, stability, and security in those countries and in those regions wherever they have enlarged. Therefore, there is no room for ambiguity, there is no room for uncertainty, and it is important that the integration processes and steps in this direction can be and should be taken. Greater communication, strategic communication with each other, but also with the EU and with NATO is something that is crucial, because the communication of truth is something that we should be countering to all that propaganda and disinformation. And the truth is that NATO enlargement, EU enlargement, are the greatest tools for the democratization of our countries, for stronger institutions in our countries, and the rule of law building in our countries. So this is something that, of course, is extremely important nowadays. That's my a little bit longer reply to your questions and what we should be doing in terms of regional strategies is that has, political, has economic and military components. And the economic component, as Minister has also mentioned, is more trade, more energy routes are important, because we need Black Sea to be very active in this direction, and Georgia had been always supporting all the energy initiatives, energy projects, or transport routes which provide diversity and ultimate routes to Europe and Euro-Atlantic community outside Russian Federation. So all of these components are, of course, part of the solution.
Great, thank you. Your words have made me think of a more difficult question for our next participant, George Kent, than I was originally going to ask. Heard two things there. Enlargement, faster and stronger international reaction when Russia violates, makes some military actions. At a time when many people say the US is perhaps turning inward, putting America first, is there a risk that questions like this fall on deaf ears in Washington?
If I can do as Vachtan did at first say thank you for inviting me here, us here, both the Foreign Ministry and also to Mr. Bumburas. And if I can just say one connection between where my parents grew up, Ithaca. Ithaca is the mythical town where Odysseus came from. And I think this theme of coming home, whether it's coming back to Odessa, Pavlo has been here 4 times this year. This is the first time I've been in Odessa for 12 years. Odysseus was away from Ithaca for 20 years. But I think this theme of coming home, whether it's to Odessa or Crimea, is a long-term journey. And if you've read the Odyssey, a lot happened to Odysseus before he got home to Ithaca. But like Pavlo, I'm convinced, and it's US policy, that Crimea is Ukraine, and eventually Crimea will return to Ukrainian governance as it should be. Now, to your tough questions, I think the issue of enlargement, at least in the NATO context, I will not, obviously we have Peter here to represent you. NATO members made clear the will of the members of the alliance in 2008 in Bumburasa. NATO has always had an open-door policy, and we have Alexander Vinnikov here from the NATO Liaison Office. I think he'll talk tomorrow, so you can, even though you won't be asking him the questions, Sasha can talk a little bit about that tomorrow. But I think the door remains open. That has always been the principle and a philosophy of the North Atlantic Alliance, which next month celebrates its 70th anniversary. I think the conditions to join not only a collection of countries that practice collective security, but are also a collection of countries that share the same values and principles, shows that it's not just about the Army or the Navy, because frankly on some of those standards, Ukraine and Georgia already do more to provide for regional security than some of the members of the alliance. But it's also a collection of countries of values and principles. And I think that issue of reforming institutions and practices is important to join the collective that represents NATO, but it's also, I think, for either Georgia or Ukraine is important what the people expect out of their own leaders. So I think the door is open. The path, hopefully, is not as long as the Odysseus' path back to Ithaca, but we will continue to work with both Georgia and Ukraine on its path of both increasing the resiliency of their institutions, their military structures, as well as making both countries prosperous and secure. And the second question, I think, was about the lack of a strong response in the immediate aftermath. Are you talking about November 25th and the attack in Kerch, or in general?
In general, you know,
because I think, obviously you have what happened.
Because the criticism, sorry to interrupt, the criticism here was that perhaps the international community didn't react strongly enough and quickly enough over Georgia, and then everything else sort of follows as a...
Well, I think in retrospect, and we can always learn from history in retrospect, the international community should have realized that Georgia was not just a one-off incident. And I think that if we had our Moldovan colleagues here, they might even push the timeline not to 2008, but back to 1992, when the intervention in Moldovan affairs to create Transnistria started. So I think what we have here is in retrospect, as students of history, not just practitioners, a pattern of behavior of a country which does not accept the international rules of the game. All of our countries came together in 1975 in Helsinki and agreed to the Helsinki Final Act. And those principles are principles that were good enough for Leonid Brezhnev. In 1990, the countries came back together in Paris in the Paris Declaration, and at that point it was Mikhail Gorbachev. And again, those fundamental values were endorsed. In a way, although it's a painful subject and may open me up to more questions, Boris Yeltsin and other leaders got together in Budapest in 1994 and reaffirmed the same fundamental values. And so what was acceptable in terms of the rules of the game to Brezhnev, Gorbachev, and Yeltsin was not acceptable to Putin. And so what we have collectively as the international community, a revisionist country that doesn't accept the rules, whether it's written into international treaties or accepted international practice. And I think clearly we have struggled with an ineffective response to a country that doesn't want to play by the rules, invades its neighbors, kills its neighbors' citizens, and is not being held to account. So I think that's part of what we're going to be debating. How can we more effectively respond? I think there are steps that we can take, including strengthening sanctions regimes. That would be the punitive stick side of the approach. And then increasing the resiliency and effectiveness of countries, whether it's Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, and then the collective response so that trade and energy flows can flourish, as Vahtan said, whether it's the deep port of Anaklia, which has a great potential for transforming the commerce across the Black Sea, the Southern Gas Corridor that Georgia and Azerbaijan have worked with. That's on the economic side. And then on the security side, I think there's much more we can do together in consultation with our Turkish allies, Romanian allies and partners as well, so that all the countries which share a commitment to the same rules can work together more effectively. That includes in maritime domain awareness, that will be probably a greater network of coastal radars. That includes capacity to patrol the waters of the Black Sea, and the U.S. has granted some island-class cutters to Georgia and now Ukraine, and eventually we may get to the point about maritime lethal assistance. But I think there is much more that we can do both on the energy side and economic side to make the countries of the Black Sea region cooperating, as well as on the security side.
Thank you. On the point about the economy, I think it's a good time to bring in Pieter Wagner from the European Commission. I know that you were recently in Mariupol. Maybe you can update us on how the European Commission sees, what the possibilities are to help from a European perspective.
Thanks a lot, but I also still need a few remarks at the beginning. Firstly, we're definitively not up for the Eurovision Song Contest because the time of pure boy groups was over in the mid-90s. Secondly, thank you very much to the organizers for the challenge to represent the European Union in this. A challenge because expectations are often high when we're sitting somewhere. And you go right to an important point where we are very active. But here as well, I think I first have to make the point, you can't be in this region without talking really regionally. We have in the EU the global strategy, and we have this nice sentence in it, which is, in a world caught between global pressures and local pushback, regional dynamics come to the fore. And I think this is where it is happening. The region, the Isles of Sea at the moment is where the things are happening, where you see it. So I'd like to use that as an example. And Pablo and others know, whenever it comes annexation Crimea, we stand firm. Whenever it comes to the Russian aggression in the east, we stand firm. We have first important part of the EU reaction, our sanction regime in place over the time, and it's working. There is, however, our indeed second part, and that is what I would group under the heading of resilience. What we want to do in Azov, that's why I start a bit more generally, is what we're doing elsewhere. What we're doing regionally, there was already reference made to it, in the context of the Eastern Partnership, generally in the context of the partnership policy, because we try to improve connectivity. We try to bring, now notably in those countries which want to move faster, which want to move further, we try to bring to them the trans-European networks, we try to bring the energy community to the region, we try to build physical, but also other kinds of infrastructure, digital connections, a lot about people to people, because that is very much what it comes down to at the end. You have to also make sure that the people who live here now see a future for themselves in this region for the future. As I said, very much looking from the Azov perspective, but I think it's a wider issue. And it's very much a policy where we're trying to put the people also at the center of the attention. Infrastructure is important. A lot of the discussions around the Azov reactions is about infrastructure, because if you look at the maps, yes, there are infrastructures, connections which are no longer functioning, which have to be fixed. But if you travel there, and we were indeed privileged, it was about a week that we were not only in Mariupol, but also going along the coast, going a little bit inside the country, the feeling of the presence of the war, the feeling that the people have to still digest and absorb a rather high number of IDPs, refugees. The war is much more present than probably many of us think. We think Luhansk, Donetsk, if we talk the aggression in the east, it's much, much further into the country, and it's notably along the Azov shore. For us, it's therefore really important that we work on that, and we work a little bit similar lines as they were given already by George. It's building on institutions. The people have to feel that they are living in a state that is welcoming them, that is serving them. The people have to have the impression that there is a prosperous future ahead, because that is what keeps them going and what gives them the future. We have indeed in the Azov region identified a number of also now targeted additional support issues, which we will try to roll out quickly, because another lesson from it is we have to react quickly. We cannot go through our 24-month programming cycles and then start signing contracts at the end of 2021. So we are about to really, in the coming month, try to make also Europe more visible by setting up a program office in the region. We want to make there very quickly, making for the people a future on the economic side. So it's making funds available, microcredits, target some of that there. Making for younger people, but also for those from existing companies which are about to lose their jobs, training possibilities available. We are optimistic that we can, in the coming month, start with a concrete work on the first vocational education and training centers, as we had them in the pipeline for the rest of the country. I think this is now the moment to go faster into that region and to do something very directly there. But then there is an even less visible area, and it was mentioned already, and that is the whole domain of disinformation and cyber. This is really, we are far beyond, I now also have to go back to the old Greeks, we are far beyond the Trojan horse. We're experiencing in the EU developments, attacks, which Ukraine and some of the people here on the panel have experienced much earlier. We can learn from Ukraine, we can work on that, and we're doing it, by the way, and we're doing it very well together. Sitting here with Pavlo Klíмкін on the panel, I think it is an area where we are training now jointly, and a lot of support is coming from member states, the election commission, so that we can, as far as possible, stabilize that part. We are trying to build up on the disinformation front additional means to make the people aware of where are you getting your information from, to make journalists in the region, there's a very important regional development, civil society, to make them aware of how to deal with these threats. And I think we are quite active there. And since sitting even next to the United States, I think Azovsea is the micro example, but the whole region is the wider example. I think we work pretty well hand in hand here. In Ukraine, it's definitely the case. If I look how closely we are working together on the cyber, we have agreed who does what, who is specialized. I think we are bringing in a lot of expertise. We are bringing it in a quite coordinated way. We have lots of EU member states that are ready to come in as well. So a lot of it really is the Euro-Atlantic cooperation here. You can, in many areas, cyber disinformation are probably the most obvious ones at the moment, see it and feel it. So for us, it's really, you look at the people, yes, the Azovsea is a very specific situation right now, but the overall approach is the same. We have to improve the resilience, and that is the prosperous state, institutions that serve the citizens, and citizens that can really develop their ideas, their business ideas, their cultural ideas, the social ideas freely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Turn to our final panelist now, Danіел Мітов. Heard mentioned a few times hybrid war, disinformation, hacking. Bulgaria is somewhere that has been a target for Russia for all of these things. Could you share with us a little bit your experience of that, how Bulgaria tried to combat that, and how the region could do better at combating it together?
Well, first, apologies. First, I would like also, as the colleagues, to thank the organizers, to thank Pavlo for the invitation, and of course the Bumburasa Foundation for sponsoring and inviting us, and the German Marshall Fund. We speak about these type of malign influences, and we know that they're different in each country, but of course there are common denominators, and the tactics are basically more or less the same. But I would like for us just to render ourselves an account of what is the final goal of the whole exercise. Why is Russia doing what it's doing? And to me, and I think this is kind of a more or less widely shared opinion, is Russia is trying to create a different world order. This one, as George was saying, Russia is not doesn't feel that it has enough influence, enough deserved influence in this configuration of the world, of how things are functioning right now, and wants to change all that. Russia wants a world where more or less the Westphalian type of world relations, where where the sovereignty, national sovereignty, stays on top of the value system in the international affairs, and everything else, freedom of speech, human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, and everything else goes under the carpet, not mentioned, not taken into account when it comes to international relations. So that's first, and they're doing everything in order to achieve that, including playing the scenario of a stronghold under siege. So that's how Russia portrays itself inside for the domestic public, and of course tries to project that outside. Bulgaria has the whole bouquet of hybrid beauties which Russia can offer. And we can of course start with the classic disinformation, which was just mentioned, and the classic idea that in order to destroy a democracy, you need to enhance and further the cleavages within a democratic society. So whatever it is, in Bulgaria, it is usually related to sentiments towards Russia, being how to put this, a part of our liberation in 1878 during the Russian-Turkish War, liberation from the Ottoman Empire, of course exaggerating heavily the role and the purpose with which this war was waged at the time, and putting on the other side Turkey, and creating, of course, through proxies the image of Turkey, maintaining and maintaining the image of Turkey as the country or the power that has occupied Bulgarian lands for a very long time. So basically, that's a cleavage that has been in our society for decades, especially during the communist regime, when Turkey was the NATO enemy. So what the Russian propaganda or disinformation efforts rather do, they feed both sides. They feed the ones who defend the Russian role in the liberation war, and at the same time the ones who somehow defend the historical narrative that nothing was as it was described during the communist times. It is the same with everything you can think of. Wherever there's a social cleavage, we saw that in Greece when Greece and already Northern Macedonia were signing the Prespa agreement. The Russians went in and started basically pumping up the narrative from on the side of the Greek nationalists, and also the ones on the side of Skopje, in order to create divisions and basically put hurdles in front of the integration of Skopje into the North Atlantic structures and further on the European Union, of course. So that's been always the game with the different countries, whether in the Black Sea region or the Balkans, to stop the integration, or at least to slow it down to a maximum extent, the integration of all these countries. And when certain countries are already members of NATO and the European Union, the goal is to sow discord inside NATO and the European Union. Even break those alliances. Brexit is one good example of how certain destabilizing actions and again feeding cleavages, feeding both sides of a debate with a radical narrative can bring discord in a society, a referendum, and then Brexit happens.
But if we speak specifically about the Black Sea region, what can the countries in this region do to fight back against?
A lot, and the first thing is maybe share intelligence, because we saw how very recently, actually in Bulgaria, it came out the information that one of the GRU officers who participated in the in the Skripal poisoning in the UK was, before that, in 2015, in Bulgaria, when a Bulgarian businessman was poisoned. Now, whether there's a connection or not, we still don't know. The investigation has not found anything of the sort, but we need to be clear here. But when it comes to acting, let's say, officers, GRU officers, or active intelligence officers of the Russian intelligence on the territory of different Black Sea countries, and not only, of course, the region can start potentially thinking about how to share information at least in that direction when we know who we are dealing with. That's one thing. Of course, enlargement was mentioned here, and I would support very much the idea that the countries from the Black Sea region, which are already members of NATO and the European Union, need to be strong advocates for the enlargement of both NATO and the European Union with the countries which are striving towards membership, and of course helping the democratic reforms in all these countries. That's one of the most important things, because what is the narrative of the Russian propaganda? You, the West, are no better than us. They're creating a moral equivalency between themselves and us. You are no better. Your system, called democracy, does not exist. You're governed by deep state elites. Those deep state elites create the illusion of a choice, and you basically are crooks. And to fight a crook, you need another crook, and this is us, the Russians. They openly basically say, yes, we're all crooks, you're crooks, we are crooks, but we're at least honest about it. So this moral equivalency is completely and utterly false, and we all know that, but we need to realize that we need to build up a narrative in order to first and foremost defend our institutions. Defend institutions, defend the main principle of the main principles of democracy. Defend our freedom of speech and not let it be abused. Defend the separation and division of powers. Defend human rights, and most of all, the independence of our judiciaries and of our institutions when it comes to justice systems. Because I've heard of one, and I've finished with this, I've heard of one Bulgarian politician whose name I'm not going to quote right now, the following phrase. The only thing, and the pro-Russian one, the only thing you need in order to reverse the democratic process is to get hold of the media and the prosecution. Everything else will follow. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks very much for the interesting opening comments. I've got a lot of questions myself, but let's open it up to the floor. Do we have a microphone somewhere? Yes, we do. Okay. Who would like to ask a question? Please identify yourselves and speak as clearly as possible, and make sure you're clear who you're addressing your question to. Yes, please, over there. This lady here. This lady here with her hand raised. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Tomak. I represent Ukrainian NGO sector, the one which deals with human rights. And obviously, human rights is one of the dimensions of security, so that's why I have a few questions to our guests. First one is the question to Mr. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. You have a very interesting experience of negotiating processes with Russian Federation after the Russian-Georgian War 2008. And I'm wondering whether you think that some of this experience, namely the Karasina-Bashidze negotiating process, negotiating platform, might be useful for Ukraine. Because maybe someone doesn't know that we have Minsk negotiating process, but we have no negotiations over the Crimean situation, even the humanitarian one. But at the moment we have lots of illegal detainees, as Mr. Klímkín mentioned, and thank you for that. And there is no place where the fate of these people can be discussed. So do you think that your experience can be useful in negative or in the positive way? And my second question is to Mr. Pieter Wagner. Again, we understand that sanctions, personal sanctions, is one of the ways to respond to human rights violations, gross human rights violations. And my question to you is related to so-called EU Global Human Rights Act, the idea which is discussed now in EU, whether you think it could be adopted in the nearest time, and what are the obstacles, because we as human rights NGOs are supporting this idea very much. But as far as I know, some of the countries like Hungary does not support this idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shall we reply? Thank you very much for the question, because, yeah, I mean, obviously, from the Georgian perspective, we have pledged ourselves to the non-use of force, to the peaceful resolution of the conflict. Therefore, the formats that are there are important to kind of facilitate this process. And as a lady who asked the question mentioned, we have a couple of formats. And the first and the foremost is Geneva International discussions, where we sit with Russian Federation, but we are also having and sitting the organizations like European Union, OSCE, UN, and United States being part of the discussions. And this is the major format. This is the main format where we discuss security and political related topics, as well as humanitarian issues. And I have to unfortunately say that despite the fact that we have had 10 years now, last year in 2018, of having the Geneva International discussions, we have not had major progress in the discussions. That's why, frankly speaking, it is extremely important that we have greater political support from major players, like I have mentioned right now, to assert positive pressure on the Russian Federation to come out from the comfort zone. Because today, Russia is in a way in the comfort zone, because they do participate in this format, but at the same time there are no deliverables. So it is extremely important that the participants and parties to these discussions bring some assertiveness and some positive pressure on the other side. And if that happens, we're confident that Russia will have to deliver at some point. Lady mentioned another format which is called Karasina-Bashize format, which is an informal format, which was in fact kind of initiated by the Georgian side alongside other unilateral initiatives that we took when it comes to Russian Federation. And this format has brought some results because, I mean, probably many of you know that Georgia doesn't have diplomatic relationships with Russian Federation. Thus, basically, there was zero interaction with them. Thus, this format gave an opportunity to somehow take some steps on what is called soft power related topics, which is trade, which is education, cultural exchanges, tourism, people-to-people contacts. And I have to say that in this format, I mean, some positive things had been happening. But at the same time, of course, I have to also mention that this positivity, unfortunately, had never had been reflected or translated in another format, which is a formal one and which deals with the security and more hard power related topics. So obviously it is not up to me to make a judgment when it comes whether this kind of a format could benefit Ukraine or not. Obviously it's up to the Ukraine side to look at some of the benefits that this informal format brought to Georgia and make its own decisions. But again, at the same time, I must say that despite some of the benefits that this format brought to us, unfortunately, it had not inspired Russia to deliver on major topics like non-use of force, international security arrangements, or IDP and refugee return.
Maybe I could bring in Foreign Minister Klímkín on that. You know, maybe you have some thoughts about the experience.
Look, I would love to have any informal format on Crimea with the Russians. Of course, it would be great to start discussing Crimea comprehensively, but as you can imagine, the Russians somehow are not in favor of this option. But now what we have in Crimea is a total, fundamental clampdown on human rights. Basically, we have arrests almost every night on Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians, many Russians, and the mood in the occupied Crimea has been changing. Now even people who were, you know, careful in 2014 now started changing their minds because the Russians getting on a wider scale people from Russia, especially from Northern Caucasus, from Volga to Crimea. Their clear idea is to squeeze out of the occupied Crimea pretty much everything, everyone who is opposing occupation. Now if you see, you know, either it's Crimean level or local level, pretty much no one who comes for Crimea in charge. The Crimeans are totally deprived of any real influence on the ground. So anything, you know, Abashidze and Karasin, it was focused not on something which the Russians believe it's a part of Russian territory. And here Russia keep pretending it's now Russia. So any sort of formal, whether formal or informal, would mean for Russia that they start talking about the future of Crimea. So I personally believe that we will come to this moment, not just because of international pressure and sanctions, but because I very much hope in Moscow the people start understanding what is going on really on the ground in Crimea. And it's a lot going on in the sense of people perception. And now Crimea becoming a kind of military base with up to 40,000 militaries placed there. It will be even more. We have reasons to believe that they prepared infrastructure for nuclear weapons. You know, the same back in the time of the USSR. So what I would love to have is any format with our friends focused, at least, like Maria has just said, on human rights, on people needs in Crimea. What I proposed many times, also to Lavrov, and you can imagine the answer. But I do believe that the Russians, with all kind of irrational drive around Crimea, will be forced to start talking in what kind of format, it's a different issue. We have United Nations resolutions on human rights. We have clear idea about how to place international humanitarian organizations and United Nations or on permanent basis in Crimea. You can imagine again the Russian reaction. But at the end of the day, actually the Russians started to do the same in the occupied Donbass, getting people out of Russia to create a point of no return. But at the same time, the mood of, so to say, people who were living in Crimea for many years is completely different from the time even a couple of years ago. They simply got the point that Crimea under Russian occupation is going nowhere. But I can't say now the real timing and under what conditions we would be able to force Russia in starting talking on this issue.
Thank you very much. Peter, the second part of the question was
significantly shorter, because you know that we never speculate about how much time it will take until in the EU we arrive at being united in diversity. So decision-making processes take a while, and that's a bit the additional element here. In an election year, not only in Ukraine, but also in the European Union, in this one, it will take even longer.
Thank you. Another question. The gentleman over there with his hand raised.
Thank you. My name is Madalinskas. I am a political analyst from Lithuania, former member of parliament, and currently working as international expert with NGO Ukrainian Donbas Gate, which is registered in Mariupol. Following Mr. Wagner's presentation, probably we could come also to another region, which is very close to Black Sea, Azov Sea region. Because here, probably the situation is even more tense than the Black Sea region today. So I very much welcome Mr. Wagner for your initiative to come with the EU experts to this region and to really look what could be done in the social, economical, and infrastructure in order this region would be developed as such together with Ukraine, which is very much important one. But now the spring is coming, and the spring is very good time, but for the sea, that means the ice coming out of the sea. And my question is really, do Ukraine, United States, EU, have a response? What will happen again if Russia will begin to stop again ships going to Ukrainian seaports? Do, again, we have answer? What would happen if Ukraine would decide to send a military ship to the Ukrainian seaports, which it have to have a right according to the agreement 2005, and Russia would call it a provocation? And the question is very serious, because we all understand we're now coming to the anniversary, very sad anniversary of the Crimea annexation. But I would say what is going on in Azov Sea, it's look like Azov Sea annexation. And then, if to see that Russia is going like step by step, like a chain reaction, what would happen if next day Moscow would say, look, what are those military ships are doing all around Odessa? Maybe it's a problem for our drilling gas and oil in the sea shelf in annexed Crimea region. To my understanding, it's really needed to have an answer to those questions. And Azov Sea, it's now the crucial point for this to stop this kind of cycle reaction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who'd like to respond on that? Maybe George?
I think this is one of the key questions that none of us here is going to have a good answer. Going back to what you described last year, I think there are two parts. One was the blocking of the ships in and out of the Sea of Azov, and then the use of the so-called Boyko towers that they then took over and moved in the direction of Snake Island, and then using that as an excuse to block off essentially de facto blockade of parts of the Odessa ports in August of 2018, collectively, we don't yet have a good response. I think we started pushing the Russians, but then, of course, they say, oh, there's no problem, we let the ships through. And there's been this proposal being discussed even in Munich for an observer mission, either an OSCE mission or a French-German mission. But I think we could all guess, even if there was an agreed mission, would the Russians say, okay, you can come once? Well, for one day, of course, the Kerch Strait will be open, they'll clear the backlog on the Sea of Azov, and then when the observers leave, the next informal blockade will start. So I think the question that collectively we face is, besides talking diplomatically, are there other measures that collectively we can take to put more pressure on the Russians? And so I think there have been discussions and propositions, not yet agreed, but for instance on commercial shipping. AKK, the new head of the CDU, before she was selected last fall, suggested, for instance, considering blocking access to European ports for Russian ships that come out of the Sea of Azov. The US actually does that with ships that go and dock in Cuba. If a commercial ship goes to Cuba for 6 months or a year, they can't come to the port of Baltimore or the port of New Orleans. So that sort of pressure on Russian commercial shipping that is a response to the pressure against, so I think that's an issue, but again, it's easy for me to say as an American official because the issue is really blocking access to European ports. Another issue I think that people have started discussing is should we try to deny berthing to the Russian military ships? This was something that was looked at when the Russian Navy started going into Syria. Again, in practical terms, the countries that have given berthing privileges to the Russian military navy, not the commercial ships, is Cyprus, Spain, and Portugal. 80% of that is in Cyprus. So I think that's something that could put pressure on the Russian Navy in an asymmetric fashion based on what is happening in the Sea of Azov. But again, it's, in some ways it's easy for me as an American to suggest something that some other country has to do. Whether there's the will to do so, I think, is another question. And then we go to the issues of sanctions, personal sanctions, whether we can, whether it's related to human rights, and we call it our Magnitsky Law, whether it's related to the 5th anniversary of the occupation of Crimea, or some other hook. Both, as Peter said, the US and the EU have very carefully worked together for the past 5 years. Are we able to go after individuals and possibly even the maritime sector? And I think that then becomes a much more complicated factor based on our own legislative authorities and the legislative authorities that the EU states have.
Thank you.
One simple point. We had a meeting with EU foreign ministers, Friends of Ukraine group, and I shared with our friends a simple idea about permanent monitoring mission. I even have a name for that, a very nice one, Black Sea Monitoring Mission. And you should not be there for all the time. It should be a smart combination of monitoring from space, naval monitoring, and monitoring from the air. You could combine it very effectively, understanding what is going on. It would also additionally help us to detect different kind of breaches of sanctions towards Crimea, because we know that some ships coming into the Black Sea, switching off GPS transponders and trying to take over some of the loads to other ships going after that to Crimea. You don't need a lot of stuff for that. You need just technical capability and political will to start working on that. Let's push for this idea. It should be permanent. We all understand how to shape it up. It's a very simple mandate. We have still some EU countries, let's say it in a very careful way, who have been thinking of this idea. but it could be as effective as possible, because if we release all the information about Russian checks in real time, it would play like an additional leverage on them. The Russians keep delaying ships now for 1 day, for 2 days. There was a case a couple of months ago, then one Bulgarian ship has been delayed for 9 days. And the Russian narrative, we are trying to find terrorists on board. If Russian FSB is unable to find terrorists for 9 days on one Bulgarian ship, I would, on the place of Putin, I don't like to be, in his place, but I would have a problem with FSB. But the whole idea is just to suffocate any real economic activity around Ukrainian Donbass. 5 years ago, the economic turnout in Mariupol port facility was 18 million tons. Now it's 4.5. And basically it was a gateway for our steel export and our grain export. And you should understand what is the real challenge here. Of course, we can reshuffle all these supply chains to railway. It's basically possible. It's more expensive, it's difficult, but one day of delay in the ship costs more than $100,000. It's definitely difficult, but if it's reshuffled, it's very difficult to get back. So fundamentally, it would constitute an immense challenge for all kinds of activities on Ukrainian Donbass, not just Mariupol, not just Berdyansk. It's important to understand. But the whole Ukrainian Donbass and the whole Ukrainian South, it's actually why we've been working with our EU friends, not just on Mariupol, not just on Berdyansk, but the whole Ukrainian Donbass on supporting it, infrastructure, human capital. And basically, I would like to extend it to the whole Ukrainian South. It should be the ambition. It's not going, in 1 day from today to tomorrow, but we should be up for it.
Thank you.
May I have one point? Because
please.
I've been briefed by a few pollsters recently, and since I'm not only into the question who wants to be president, I'm looking into long-term trends. I got an interesting answer because I said, look in the East. There is very low support for NATO, for EU membership. In some areas, less than 30% on NATO membership, which is relatively low compared with the rest of the country. And then my counterpart told me yes, but it was 3% 5 years ago. So on certain things, you have to build up resilience and increase the price for Russia to get what they want. That is the issue, together with, indeed, the complete economic revival of the region under other terms. That is an important issue, but you also have to increase the price for getting what they want.
Thank you. Got time for a couple more questions. Gentleman there with glass hand raised.
Thank you. Alexander Tsvetko, I'm professor of Kyiv University. And first of all, strongly support the idea of this forum, the concept of transatlantic assistance and partnership. With my students, we quite often also analyzing those situation in Ukraine, aggression, and we consider that this is a direct consequences of Putin's concept would be traced from the previous just Russian and Soviet Union concepts, Primakov in particular, just to be like new global force acting in the multipolar just war. With this tension, what could be practical steps to counterdoing to such approach? I think that business sphere would be one of those very important topics for consideration. And in particular, for example, those new challenges like introducing natural gas, those LNG gas terminal in Poland and connections to Kirk in Croatia. Could it be, and my question is to the representative of the United States and the European Commission, could it be possible to think about the just prolonging those lines where these terminals probably appeared in the Black Sea? And it could be support, a great support for independence. And a question to the ministers, business climate. This is very poor figures of the direct foreign investments in our countries. Are there any discussions on the governmental levels how to improve this situation? How to introduce more possibilities for developing business cooperations in between our countries and in the region and wider Black region? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe George, we can start with you.
Yeah, Peter, you want to go first this time? Or
let me start on the energy side, where there is a general policy on the EU side, indeed, to work on making the EU less dependent on external sources. And here it's also where Ukraine has a lot to contribute to the overall exercise. If energy efficiency in the country was at the level of the lowest EU member state, they could actually export energy. And that is why we, together with many of our Ukrainian partners across the country, and with quite significant financial resources, just the last 2 years more than 100 million euro, invest into energy efficiency. Because our commission always says the cheapest energy is the one that you don't use. And that is really also a significant contribution, and where notably in Ukraine, but also in some of the other countries in the region, you can, with relatively modest efforts, get enormous gains.
I will pick up on that and note that it is probably, we don't have a Turkish representative here, but it is probably unrealistic to expect LNG coming into the Black Sea in Odessa because the Turks won't let it through the Bosphorus. But following on what Peter says about energy efficiency, what Ukraine can do in itself is do a much better job of domestic exploration and production. And this week there was a good step of what are known as production sharing agreements, opening it up really for the first time to bidding by legitimate foreign investors who could bring foreign technology and increase domestic production. There's no reason why Ukraine has to import energy. If it has better efficiency and better market conditions, it can produce more gas than it needs. And that helps, again, increase the independence of Ukraine. I think for unleashing the economic potential of Ukraine, there are some steps that could be done that have been discussed for years. An open land market would help many producers in Ukraine, perhaps not those that control land already, but I think that would unlock incredible value for the entire agribusiness sector and make a very successful sector even more so. I think there are privatization issues. You've got the Odessa portside plant here. I know we started serious discussions over 3 years ago in supporting privatization. And coming up with a privatization plan that is designed for success rather than perhaps for failure would be one way, again, of unlocking value. And so I think there are many things that Ukraine could do to improve the investment climate. Ultimately, though, I think the number one issue for foreign investors is a more reliable judicial system and a court system. And that's the same whether you are a foreign investor or a Ukrainian citizen. You want there to be justice. And without justice, you're not going to see, or a justice system that works, you're not going to see the levels of foreign investment that would drive much higher rates of growth.
Daniel.
Just to add up to what George was saying, exactly, judiciary, when it comes to business climate, judiciary is probably the first condition. well-functioning independent judiciary which can act quickly. That's one thing, but also the question of corruption. Russia has weaponized corruption for years, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. In Western Europe, of course, they're trying, they have certain successes, but the institutions there are, let's say, they have enough tradition in order to somehow react quickly and efficiently. But when it comes to new democracies, new in terms of post-1989, that's a problem. And I usually give this very simple example. If German business wants to move in Bulgaria, for example, first thing they do is find a law firm in order for the law firm to help guide them through the judiciary system, through the legal hurdles. And when Russian business wants to operate in Bulgaria, they come with a suitcase, because that's how it functions there. That's how they do business. And one of the biggest realizations in international relations is that countries export what they have and how they function. It is, to a great extent, it was a mistake to think that through free market and inclusion of Russia, for example, or even China into the global market, somehow the free market will become a vehicle for democratic values. The people will start seeing benefit in those values and will start pushing the autocrats out and demanding more freedom and more checks and balances and so on and so forth. What we did through this inclusion of autocratic regimes into the global markets, global free market, was basically to empower to a great extent the autocrats and give them more instruments in order to tighten the grip around the throats of their own population and start hitting back at us, because they have a lot of resources right now to do that. So we need to think of changing to a great extent the relationship between the let's say the club of democracies, if I may use this a little bit arrogant term, and those who want to belong to a different club, to a different world, which we can call anti-democracy international even. I mean, the Kremlin recently is organizing, substituting the Communist International with anti-democracy international, basically. Take a look at the world map. Start counting the countries which are governed by crooks, kleptocrats, cannibals, whatever, and you will necessarily see that they're friends of the Kremlin and very often sponsored by the Kremlin. Another thing I wanted to add up here is we all know that the Russians are sponsoring extremist parties in all the democracies. Well, let's take a look at the vehicles they use in order to realize that funding and start basically sanctioning those banks and limiting their possibilities to operate financially. If we really believe in transparency, then we need to apply it way more vigorously.
Thank you. We'll come to Vahtan, and then we'll finish with Foreign Minister. Keep it short. We've got a couple of minutes for each of you.
Yeah. Just to maybe reflect also to what was mentioned by the gentleman, because I think it's a very important point. I think everybody here agrees that if we speak about the regional strategy, economy and business environment and promoting and facilitating business context is should be part of the plan and is part of the plan. Because, and I think things are really happening in that direction, and I mean, having an EU representative here, I must mention that both Georgia and Ukraine have association agreements with EU, and DCFTAs, Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreements, are part of that agreement, which means that We are in the process, and the EU is very instrumental in helping us in terms of changing our legislations and kind of improving the business environments in our countries, as well as, of course, facilitating businesses with these free trade agreements being in place. But of course, the potential is great, and we should be doing also more in this direction. A gentleman also mentioned energy and energy routes, of course, and it has been also mentioned earlier by George, I think, that this is something that is extremely important to promote as well. And all these routes like Southern Gas Corridor or Trans-Caspian International Transport Route or Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railroad or etc., Agri project is something that should be very much supported and promoted. And I think we have been very vocal with our Ukrainian friends, also with the European Union, now more recently to support and promote ferry connections between Georgia, Ukrainian, and Black Sea ports of EU member states like Bulgaria and Romania. And this is very important because we end up what we have started with, our discussions that connectivity, Black Sea becoming a sea of prosperity and these connections of ferries on trade is something that would definitely do its part of the job when it comes to bringing stability and security in the region. But if this is, of course, the final remarks that we are given to, I would just add two words that this interoperability, greater engagement in our part of Europe, and of course, which also includes EU's and NATO's greater participation in democratization of process of our countries. This is not going to be only, of course, the success of Georgia, or it's not going to be only the success of Ukraine. We are strong believers that this is going to be a success for the whole Europe and the whole Euro-Atlantic community. Thus, it is important that we acknowledge that, and it is important that we act fast and engage in all these areas that we have discussed today as quickly as possible.
Thanks very much. Pablo, if you want to say a final word, make it quick though, because otherwise you'll miss your own press conference.
Yeah, look, this Monday we had an incredible show of transatlantic solidarity. All of us. But what does it mean practically? Political pressure on Russia? Of course. Sanctions? Of course. Permanent monitoring? Definitely. But we have a number of great innovative ideas we also have to follow. Sharing of information, sharing of intelligence, joint patrols, joint infrastructure. It's all doable now. And it will be effective because you can talk to Russia only from the point of strength. It's my experience of many years how we can play it out in a really effective way. In the same time, European Union, we have Georgia, we have us, we have also Moldova. What we have in our association agreements is already a way forward. But we need to step it up in the sense of advanced association partnership. Now, and it's a very interesting development, we started pushing the European Union for more integration. For example, energy, our gas transport system. Now we need more than the European Union is ready to deliver. The same way, but in a slightly different way, also for Georgia. So let's try to address what we have already, what we have started discussing in the sense of pushing Russia back. And one final point. We need basically to drop the idea and the approach of being reactive to Russia. We have to start a real proactive push towards the Russians. We know how to do it. It's just about political will and about motivation and about mobilizing all our friends and partners. And in the wider Black Sea area, it should be in the interest of all of us. Because again, 30 years ago, the whole situation in the Black Sea was completely different. Now we were able to reverse it. It's just Russia who is on the other part of reality. And we should be able to push the Russians back.
Thank you. Thanks very much to all the panelists for such a broad and thought-provoking discussion, which I'm sure we'll be able to continue over dinner and tomorrow. Bruno would perhaps like to say something.
Well, James, thank you for your thorough management in this panel. Thank you to the speakers. Don't run just yet, but please give a round of applause for a very good panel. And there will be time for more discussion tomorrow. Perhaps a few house announcements before you all leave. We invite the press to stay for a little bit in the room, but to our guests who have confirmed for the gala dinner, I had to tell you that we invite you to gather in the hotel lobby, and we will leave there at 6:30 maximum. So again, for those guests that confirmed for the gala dinner, meet us in the lobby. We're leaving around 6:30. Thank you very much.
Так.
Але подвійне громадянство, як агресора, має бути за будь-яких умов виключено. Коли Росія поверне окупований Донбас і окупований Крим, можливо, ми до того повернемо. Але до того моменту для подвійного громадянства. Щодо громадянства, наприклад, депутатів нашого парламенту, Верховної Ради, має бути стосовно цього вкладати, щоб але хочу підкреслити, я за те, щоб були чіткі критерії цього громадянства. Я за те, щоб сьогодні громадянства Канади, Сполучених Штатів могли спокійно поїхати до нас, працювати. Могли поїхати дуже багато в чому допомагати. От стосовно Керченської протоки, я навіть згадав випадок, багато хто забув. Це дуже відомо всім містам, але, звичайно, мало відомо широкому загалу. Я вважаю, що те, що ви кажете про свободу мореплавства, має стосуватися всіх. Всі, абсолютно всі військові звичайно мають користуватися цим просто, але в питанні свобода. Дякую за це запитання. Це дуже класне запитання. Я вважаю, що нам потрібно повномасштабно профільному мають наші мають базу для наших. Звичайно, це мають бути центри наших партнерів, сприяти інформації. Нам потрібна повномасштабна військово-морська інфраструктура. Ми маємо побудувати ми маємо відчувати ці пропозиції. Ми можемо це разом з нашими робити це питання, звичайно, подальшого обговорення, обміну інформації. Ми будемо говорити про це. Ми будемо говорити про це нас, нашу Я от останній раз порту. Моя я ніколи не збираюся. От присід якраз там буде захід Міністерства політики, присвячений тому, що Європейська А от те, що ми сьогодні говоримо, безпека, оце, власне, є те, що я сам я вважаю, скажет да. Побачити. Звичайно, але для цього потрібно просто цікаво, воно і так цікаво. Це драматичне питання також. Безпека – те, що перше, бачите, тобто говоримо, маємо це безумовно те, саме подивіться, 30 років навколо, а зараз країни не будуть членами НАТО. Вона маємо так чорним морем безпеки. Полюшення російських комунікацій. Це якщо питання також нашого драйву. Партнерство НАТО. Нова посилення в сенсі реального просування до Європейського Союзу, мілітарна співпраця, це взаємодія, обмін інформацією, спільні патрулі, можливість використовувати спільну інфраструктуру і, звичайно, її будувати, жорсткий політичний тиск на Росію, санкції і постійна моніторингова місія щодо того, що відбувається в Чорному морі, в Керченській протоці і в Азовському морі. От якщо дуже коротко це підсумувати.
Будьте добры, если можно, свою руку в отношении членов правительства и людей, имеющих доступ к государственной тайне. По-вашему, возможно иметь своего гражданства с Канады, США, Франции, Германии, стран Европы и Америки?
Ну, я можу вам навести приклад. Є країни, в яких дозволено не тільки подвійне громадянство, але і громадянство для 3-4. Якщо це все прописано, якщо людина несе відповідальність, то конфіденційна інформація, чому би і ні. Але мають бути чіткі правила і чітке дотримання цих правил. Якщо ви працюєте на державній службі, ви маєте дотриматись цих правил, і ви маєте бути прозорими, щоб всі знали, як ви виконуєте ці правила. Друзі, я дуже дякую, я маю приєднатися до своїх друзів і колег. Ну, завтра у вас буде ще шанс із всіма багато разів поговорити. Тут є багато людей, не менш цікавих, ніж я. Дуже раджу.
Сейчас у вас будет возможность пройти со мной, сказать интервью с господином Кентом и с господином Вахнером. Всем, кому интересно, обращайте внимание на меня.
дали більше ніж $1 мільярд галузі безпеки. Це допомогли і в основному армія, є тренінг-центр в Яворові, є обладнання. І зараз ми в цьому році ми будемо допомогти флоту, тому що видно ясно, що після события в Чорному морі 25 листопада, що ситуація безпеки в Чорному морі це не є безпечна. Тобто зараз ми будемо співпрацювати з Україною, щоб була більш можливість не захищати себе в такому сенсі, що буде битва, але просто захищати країну і інтерес від тиску з боку Росії.
А що саме, як ви допоможете нашому флоту?
Ну, це залежить від, є різні можливості. Наприклад, у вересні минулого року президент Порошенко і командир флоту, який був тут сьогодні, Воронченко, були у Балтиморі, порті Балтимора. Я теж був там. Були два так звані Island Class Cutters. І зараз ми приготуємо віддати ці Island Class Cutters, це 110 футів, примерно 30 метрів. Це буде просто дати Україну нові можливості патрулювати тут в Чорному морі. Є питання coastal radars, вибачте, я не знаю, як українською. Я думаю, що це наступний етап, щоб Україна в флоті розуміла, що на Чорному морі. І потім і далі буде просто спілкування, що далі ми можемо дати. Є такий тренінг, кожен рік є Сіберіз. Я думаю, що ви будете бачити все більше і більше наші кораблі, як Кук був тут 2 дні тому. І що далі, я думаю, що тут в Одесі буде не постійно, але регулярно американські кораблі, щоб наші кораблі і українські кораблі співпрацювали.
Чи зможуть Сполучені Штати проконтролювати в випадку того, якщо наші кораблі будуть, загін кораблів буде йти з Одеси до Маріуполя, щоб там знову не повторилося те, що трапилося?
Це не питання для нас. Це не питання для нас. Ми, Америка, не може контролювати просто цю ситуацію. А моніторинг – це питання, я думаю, що міністр Клімкін сказав цікаву ідею, що треба використовувати не тільки кораблі, а теж сателіти, щоб всі дізналися, яка ситуація і на Азовському, і теж на Чорному морі. І я думаю, що це спільне завдання для всіх країн, які хочуть бачити небезпечні ситуації тут, в Чорному морі.
Представтесь, будь ласка.
Мене звати Джордж Кент, я є так званий заступник-помічником держсекретар, англійською Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Раніше я був замістителем голови місії в Україні, і тому я говорю українською.
І можна такий вопрос, ще коротке запитання. Скажіть, будь ласка, ви можете зараз висловити позицію Європейського Союзу, європейської спільноти з приводу подій, які відбувалися в Криму, тобто анексія Криму?
Тобто, вибачте, я є американським дипломатом, і ми не є членом Євросоюзу. Тобто, Пітер Вагнер, тут треба з ними спілкуватися. Я є з боку Сполучені Штати Америки, наша позиція чітка, ясна, Крим – це Україна. Кропка.
Будьте добры, я по поводу той программы, когда Соединенные Штаты были готовы передать Украине ряд боевых кораблей, которые уже...
Так, ну це о том я говорив. Англійською мовою називається Island Class Cutters. Зараз є 2 кораблі в порті Балтиморі, і ми просто приготуємо, щоб це дійсно це вже імущество України, але ще не готові переплити через океану і роботи тут в Чорному морі. Це буде в цьому році.
Дякую. Одне запитання. Можна коротке запитання з приводу Очакова?
Ви вже один, якщо є останнє питання, від кого?
З приводу Очакова, там будується зараз центр управління морських операцій. Розкажіть, будь ласка, на якому етапі це будівництво?
Тобто, це питання щодо центру в Очакові. Вибачте, я думаю, що краще говорити з нашим посольством в Києві, тому що я просто не в курсі деталей. Тобто, я не можу вам відповідати.
Дякую. Разбирайте микрофоны.
Нет, сейчас еще один будет.
Улик, тебе еще 4-й.
Будь ласка, розкажіть нам про конференцію, розкажіть ваше бачення і розкажіть, будь ласка, про тих людей, яких ви сьогодні зустріли на конференції.
As Minister Klymkin said, I think it's about time that this part of the country also has this kind of event and that we talk about the security issues, including the resilience dimension here. And I think there's hardly a better place than doing it in the Black Sea region, where in the regional sense, but then also broken down within Ukraine, the south of Ukraine, the Azov region, where you really see and live on a daily basis the challenges that are discussed. So it was really one of the very relevant events here. And the discussions, I think, also showed that the people, the colleagues of mine also on the panel, had something to offer.
Я вважаю, що це був чи не найкращий час проведення цієї конференції. І питання, про які ми тут сьогодні говорили, це безпека, це протидія загрозі безпеці, це також проблематика, з якою стикаються країни і міста півдня України, а також ми з вами сьогодні розмовляли про одну з найбільш важливих та найбільш тривожних зараз тематик, з якою стикається не тільки Україна, але й вся Європа.
Як може Європейський Союз вплинути на зміцнення безпеки?
How can European Union influence on strengthening the security of Ukraine?
I think the first panel of this event showed that there are two dimensions to it. There is the active part, which was discussed quite a lot. You could call it the punitive part. But there is also the part which is the preparatory part, the part which I called convention, resilience. And resilience means that you build up a society that is stable, a society that as a society is not a vulnerable target for an external or internal aggressor. And it's there where I think the European Union is trying to contribute. We are trying to work with the people, and that starts with infrastructure to better connect these parts of the country with the rest of the country, but it also concerns issues like education. The young people here have to have a future, have to see a future here for their education, but then afterwards also for jobs. So we are trying to make funds available for starting up companies, small funds very often, because notably young people who want to set up a companies don't need the big new investments. And that is where I think we have a whole range of areas where the European Union can help contributing to the internal stability of the country. We call it resilience, and thereby playing a very active role in contributing to the overall stability and security in the region.
Я вважаю, що є два компонента цього. Перший компонент – це стабілізація, і другий компонент – це підготовка. Підготовка до так званої стійкості. Ця стійкість нам потрібна в нашому суспільстві, нам потрібне стабільне суспільство, і я вважаю, що Європейський Союз дуже нам допомагає вкладувати в розвиток нашої інфраструктури, в розвиток нашої безпеки, нашого майбутнього. Наші люди, наші студенти потрібні, нашим студентам потрібно бачити майбутнє, а також їхню майбутню працю. В нас є фонди, які невеликі, але тим не менше ці фонди нам треба вкладати в те, щоб Європейський Союз допомагав нам робити стабільність в Україні. І коли наше суспільство буде стабільним, це буде так званий інструмент, при допомозі якого ми зможемо протидіяти будь-яким загрозам нашій безпеці.
Разрешите? Скажите, пожалуйста, вот ваша точка зрения, ваше мнение. Вступление Украины в ЕС – это перспектива лет или десятилетий?
Please tell us your opinion about Ukraine joining European Union. Is it a perspective of years, a couple of years, or decades? If it's possible.
Ukraine has an association agreement and a deep and comprehensive free trade area with the European Union. This means, together with Georgia and Moldova, it is a front runner of the countries which are the closest to us. If these agreements are implemented, you are implementing with them around 90% of what is the stock of our legislation. So there is this enormous scope of progress, of advancing. You see that one is moving into the direction, and it's very clear that Ukraine has the ambition to join the European Union at a certain moment.
В Україні вже є вже є договір про підписання про асоціацію з Європейським Союзом, вже є договір про вільну торговлю. І я вважаю, що Україна разом з Молдовою і з Грузією це найголовніші кандидати. І я бачу, що в Україні є амбіції, є майбутнє, і я думаю, що це не займе багато часу.
Сегодня министр Клімкін говорил много о перспективах вступления Украины в НАТО, и конкретно, может быть, вы можете высказать перспективу нашей страны в этом плане, насколько мы, может быть, готовы, на ваш взгляд?
Today, Minister Klímkín has been talking about our perspectives of joining NATO. What do you think about this?
I am not from NATO, so I don't have a view on that.
Я не з НАТО, тобто в мене немає думки з цього приводу.
Возможно, есть личное мнение.
Maybe you have your personal opinion.
Yes, but I don't express that in front of cameras.
Так, воно в мене є, але я не можу його зараз відкрити перед всіма. Thank you.
Thank you.
Хороший микрофон, спасибо.
Сколько надо, скажите, сделаю шагов.
Все, начинаем работать, да? Во всей истории есть вопрос очень актуальный. Зачем бизнесу поддерживать политическое, дипломатическое мероприятие? В чем интерес бизнеса?
Вопрос это достаточно сложный. Я ожидал более легкий вопрос, но я отвечаю на это. Только я не знаю, это как отвечать. Отвечать как бизнесмен, отвечать как житель Одессы или как житель Украины. Я бы отвечал как и три. Как бизнесмен все понимаем, что бизнес любит стабильность. Которая эта стабильность на последние 4 года, исходя из ситуации, которая произошла в Крым, потерялись. Мы поддерживаем любое мероприятие, как это форум, который поможет стабильности. И мы ожидаем результаты этого форума. Мы ожидаем, что партнеры из Европы и Америки помогут таким образом, чтобы это остановилось, эта война остановилась, это будет мир в Украине, и таким образом это будет подняться экономика, будет подняться бизнес. Хочу говорить простой пример. Где-то пару месяцев назад я был в Америке по определенным делам. Там живет грек, миллиардер. Он интересовался по Украине. Что у вас происходит? Я показывал ему простые экономические показатели, чтобы он понимал, что такое же экономика. Он возьмет, смотрит, говорит, ну у вас это не такая плохая экономика. У вас были большие проблемы после войны, но уже это растет экономика, это хороший показатель. Я шутил, говорю, инвестирует, у вас денег хватает. Но он говорит, знаешь что, есть это country risk, как называем на международный уровень. Это нестабильности, которые сегодня испытываем. Вот поэтому бизнес-стабильность для меня это одно и то же. Это как бизнесмен. Но кроме бизнесмена, это я и моя семья живем в Одессе. Мой отец пришел 25 лет назад в Украину. Украина нас приняла. Она была очень щедрая, и сама Украина, и люди из Украины. Мы здесь сделали хороший бизнес. И я чувствую, что этот город Одесса пришла наше время отдавать к Украине. Мы не можем решать глобальные вещи, как привести мир, конечно, но хотя бы это маленький камень или камушка ставить тоже к этому направлению. А то, что касается еще немножко дальше, это то, что произошло 4 года назад. Мой отец был подсудный консул Греции в Крыму. Я лично видел, что там произошло. Я ни в коем случае не хочу, чтобы это произошло еще не на 1 квадратный метр в нашу Украину. И поэтому это ответ на ваш вопрос.
Большое спасибо. Господа, представитель фонда Маршалла, научный сотрудник немецкого фонда Маршалла США Бруно Лете. Запишите, если я говорю, да. Бруно Лете, да. Бруно. Если у вас какой-то общий вопрос к организатору, одному из организаторов, если я озвучу, нет?
Есть.
Давайте.
Чего вы ожидали от этого форума, и надежды эти оправдываются?
What did you expect from this forum, and whether you met your expectations?
I mean, look, the German Marshall Fund strongly believes that Ukraine is part of the Euro-Atlantic family. And so this event is really in order to help Ukraine just do that. We believe at GMF that we can help Ukraine in 2 ways. First of all, we need to bring Europeans and Americans to Ukraine, to Odessa, to show them that Ukraine is a country with opportunities. And by organizing an event like this, we bring Europeans and we bring Americans to Ukraine. On the other hand, we also believe that Ukraine must go to American and European capitals and express their message that you want to belong to Europe, that you want to belong to Euro-Atlantic structure. So we, GMF, are your friend in this respect. We really want to assist Ukraine to integrate in the Euro-Atlantic family.
Ми, як німецький фонд Маршалла, бачимо це в 2 частинах. По-перше, ми бачимо Україну як частину євроатлантичної родини. І ми хочемо, щоб в Україну мали можливість приїжджати європейці та американці. І, по-друге, ми би хотіли, щоб українці також приїжджали до Європи і до Америки. І ми, німецький фонд Маршалла, це найкращий друг України в цьому сенсі.
Спасибо. Все? Спросите, пожалуйста, выиграет ли Мюнхенская Бавария Лигу чемпионов?
What do you think? Will Munich Bavaria win the Champions League?
Can you repeat this, please?
Will Munich Bavaria win the Champions League?
So the German Marshall Fund works on all kinds of policy questions, but not on sports, unfortunately. I do have my own preferences, but maybe I cannot comment what they are.
Німецький фонд Маршалла, звичайно, працює в дуже багатому сенсі різних тем в політичних темах, але не в спортивних. І в мене є, звичайно, мої преференції, але я не можу їх зараз вам сказати.
What I can say is that Ukraine has made a sovereign choice to come closer to Europe and Euro-Atlantic family. And I really believe, and the GMF believe, that we need to support your sovereign choice.
Єдине, що я можу сказати, це що Україна зробила дуже хороший, дуже правильний вибір суверенітету, і ми і наш фонд, німецький фонд Маршалла, дуже підтримуємо цей вибір України.
Такой вопрос. А возможен ли план Маршалла для Украины?
The question is Marshall Plan possible for Ukraine?
We at the German Marshall Fund actually support Ukraine, civil society in Ukraine, through our Black Sea Trust. So we have a system, a tool that funds and supports in many different ways what civil society is doing here in Ukraine for democracy, transparent institutions, rule of law. Those are very important things to us. The European Union and many other countries are also there to help Ukraine. I don't know if it's a Marshall Plan, but we could probably say that the support is there from the international community for Ukraine.
Я можу сказати, що є підтримка з міжнародного суспільства для України. Я можу сказати, що є підтримка і демократії, і верховенства права, і прозорості. І це все є з різних боків, тому це, мабуть, відповідь на ваше питання.
Можно такое питание, такой вопрос задать? Здесь, в Украине, очень часто говорят о том, что угрозы, которые исходят от России, они в том числе являются угрозами и для Европы, для Западной Европы. То есть это мы такой, скажем так, корпус, да, находимся на рубежах этой угрозы. Как к этому мнению относятся в Западной Европе? Разделяют ли они мнение?
There is an opinion that the threats which Ukraine faces are the threats not only for Ukraine, but they are the threats for Western Europe also. What is your opinion, being from Western Europe? What's your opinion about it? Is that true? Do you support this opinion?
Without peace in Ukraine, there cannot be peace in Europe. Ukraine is central to many different aspects of European security. And it has always been like that. That's why the transatlantic partners really support your endeavor, because the threats that you have in Ukraine, they also impact us. So we must build peace in Ukraine to have peace in Europe. It's logic.
Без миру в Україні не буде миру у всій Європі, тому всі трансатлантичні партнери підтримують мир в Україні, і ми повинні збудувати мир в Україні, і тільки коли буде мир в Україні, буде мир і у всій Європі.
Thank you.
Будь ласка.
Підкажіть останнє.